Before we get started, are there any questions on any of the assignments thus far? Before we get started, are there any questions over any of the homework assignments? You good with all the homework so far? If there are no questions, we're in the right one. What we're doing today in long division. So what we did Tuesday was addition, subtraction, and multiplication. What we're looking at today is long division. So we're going to divide polynomial expressions. There's two ways to do it, long division and synthetic division. We're going to do long division first. And when you divide a polynomial f of x by a non-zero polynomial divisor d of x, you get a quotient. So we get the whole part, the part that is divisible and divides out completely, plus whatever the remainder is. So if we have a remainder, it would be our r of x over d of x. Our part that comes out, and then the remainder that we have left over. So when we divide two polynomial expressions, the first thing we're going to need to do is get it set up. So we have this here. Some teachers call it a house, some call it a garage. We have this set up for long division here. In our first expression, what's being divided goes inside. And what we're dividing it by, here x plus 1 goes outside. What's being divided goes inside, what we're dividing it by goes outside. And y'all have done this before. It's been a while. We've done long division. We divide two numbers, and we see what times that number goes into our first two terms, and we multiply and subtract. Yep. And as we divide this, we're trying to see what x cubed minus x squared plus 2x plus 8 divided by x plus 1 is, or what times x plus 1 will give us x cubed minus x squared plus 2x plus 8. And as I've done this in the past, we want to try to simplify this first term out first. We want to get rid of x cubed by subtracting and multiplying, and then go to x squared, x, 2x, and 8, and work down the line. And so we'd want to see what times x gives us x cubed. But I found a better way to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to take the degree, the highest term inside and the highest term outside, and divide these here. So off to the side, we need to see what is x cubed divided by x, because that's going to give us our first thing that we're going to need to multiply the first term we need. Well, x cubed divided by x is going to be, yes, x squared, because I have three of them on top, one of them on bottom. So one of them will cancel on top and bottom, giving us x squared. We have two of them. So what that's telling us is the first thing we need to multiply through, the first term that we're needing in this division, all right, guys, focus in, is x squared. Questions on how we got x squared? So what we have to do now is we're going to multiply x squared by our term out front. So we have x squared times our x minus 1, and we're going to put it underneath and match it up with like terms, because again, we're trying to divide, we're trying to simplify out. Now at this point here, we're going to distribute the x squared. X squared times x is going to be x cubed, x to the third. X squared times negative 1 is negative x squared. And now that we have this, we're going to take it and put it under here. And then we're going to subtract. And the reason we have it set up and we've done this is we need that first term to cancel out. We need it to reduce down, as we go through these steps individually. X cubed, bless you, divided, or minus x cubed. X to the third minus x to the third is 0, because we want that first one to become 0. Make sure, no. Because this should not have been x minus 1, it's what? Sorry. X plus 1. Yep. Sign error. As I was about to say, that shouldn't become 0 also. Because our next part is negative x squared minus x squared. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. Negative 1 minus 1 is going to be negative 2, and we still have our x squared. So negative x squared plus or minus negative x, or sorry, negative x squared minus x squared should give us negative 2x squared. Because negative 1 minus 1? Yeah, no, yeah, we had a sign error that I had that we had to fix. Questions on how we got to this step here? We good with the step so far? We kind of seen how this works, yes? Our next step is we bring down our next term, 2x, okay? We repeat the process. We do everything we just did again. So this time we're going to take our first term, and our first term is now what? Negative 2x squared, and we're going to divide it by our first term outside, which is x. And this is going to give us what we need to multiply our x plus 1 by next so that we can reduce down again. Now, negative 2x squared divided by x, well, we'd still have the negative 2, because really the number in front of x on bottom is 1. Negative 2 divided by 1 is negative 2. And x squared divided by x is going to give us x. So our next term in the quotient, our result is negative 2x. And again, just like before, we're going to take this negative 2x and multiply it by our x plus 1. And negative 2x times x is going to be negative 2x squared, which is what we wanted. Negative 2x times positive 1 is going to be negative 2x. So what we have is negative 2x squared minus 2x. And we put it under its like terms. And again, we're going to subtract. We're going to subtract these here. Questions on this so far? Questions on anything we've done so far? Negative 2x squared minus negative 2x squared. Negative 2 minus negative 2. Well, the negative and negative make a positive, so we're saying negative 2x squared plus 2x squared. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Our next part that we have is 2x minus negative 2x. And again, the negative negative plus 2x plus 2x is 4x. Then we bring our next term down. Questions on this so far? Now we need to do this one more time because we need to see what times x is 4x, or easier way to do this, we can take 4x, our first term, and divide it by the first term outside. And our 4x divided by x is 4, positive 4. So we have plus 4 above the line. That's telling us what our result is going to be. And just like before, we're going to take that 4 and multiply it through what's outside. So we have to take 4 times our x plus 1. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 1 is plus 4. And once we see what 4 times x plus 1 is, our 4x plus 4, we're going to put it underneath it. We're going to match up our like terms. And then we're going to subtract. 4x minus 4x. 4 minus 4 is 0. Then we have 8 minus 4. 4. We have nothing else to bring down. We have nothing else left inside that we can bring down. We can do our division with. And because the number of terms that we're left with at this point is less than the number that we're dividing it by, 2, we're done. We have finished doing the long division steps. Now what that's telling us is that the result for this long division is x squared minus 2x plus 4 plus our remainder, whatever's left over. Now if the remainder is 0, we don't have to add anything to it. But here we're saying that the remainder is 4. And we have to put it over what we were dividing this polynomial by, which was x plus 1. So it tells us that the result of this division is x squared minus 2x plus 4 over x plus 1. Do we kind of get the steps here? That's the answer. That's what we get when we divide these two here. None of the calculators that we have. The 84 plus won't do it because it needs a value for the variable. The first ones that will do it are the 89s. They can actually do most of this division and dividing, but they're banned on most standardized tests. So, doesn't help us out a whole lot. We're going to look at another one, because again, it's going to be helpful for us to look at this and see these steps, how dividing these work. Now, the first thing we need to do is set it up. So we're set up our division symbol. What's being divided is going to go inside. So our first term is 2x to the fourth because we always start with the variable with the biggest power. Now one thing I realized I forgot to mention is that we do need all the terms. We have 2x to the fourth. Our next one is 3x cubed, yes? And in order how this goes, our next term would be our x squared term, yes? Do we have an x squared term? No. I'm going to make one. Plus 0x squared. It's not so much making it, we're just filling that spot in because 0 times anything is just 0. So we really didn't add anything to the equation. We're more putting a placeholder just to make sure we don't add unlike terms. We do have an x term, plus 5x minus 1. So anytime you're missing a term, we're going to fill it in as 0 times that term or 0. And the number of terms that we'll have in either spot is going to be one more than the degree. So the degree is 4, so we should have 5 because we have x to the fourth is 1 for x to the fourth, second x cubed, third's x squared, fourth is x, and our fifth is our constant term. So we have 4, 3, 2, 1 constant. And that's also true for our what we're dividing it by, x squared plus 3x plus 2. We have our x squared term, we have our x term, and we do have our constant term. Second power, first power, no variable. Questions on this here? Now again, when I did this, and I've taught it this way for quite a while, we looked at it and see, to start the process, we need to really eliminate the first term out. We need to get rid of it. So we would see what times x squared would give us 2x to the fourth. This is how I would normally approach this. But I think a little bit easier way is take that first term and divide it by our first term. The first term inside divided by the first term outside. So x to the fourth divided by x squared. Or 2x to the fourth divided by x squared. Well, the 2 is going to be there because it's really just 2 divided by 1. So really what we're dividing is x to the fourth over x squared. I have 4 on top. We have 2 on bottom. So 2 of the x's on top will cancel with 2 of the ones on bottom, leaving us with x squared. When we divide like bases, we subtract.
How do you know that it's going to be x squared divided by? It's the first number.
So the first, the largest one outside. Largest one outside, because when we do the multiplication, the largest one outside is what's going to become the largest one inside, is what we want to have happen. So that those reduce, those cancel, and we start seeing what we get. Now once we get this, we want to put that term on top of the division symbol for our long division. Now I put it over the like term. Just since we have 2x squared is what we're going to multiply by for our first step, for this first process, it's the biggest term in our answer. I'm going to put it over the x squared term. Now what we can do next is we're going to multiply 2x squared by our x squared plus 3x plus 2. You can write it out next to it. I'm going to write it underneath because I just don't have room. We're going to distribute the 2x squared. Now 2x squared divided by times, not divided, times 2x squared times x squared. 2x to the fourth, because x squared times x, where we multiply like bases, we add the exponents. X squared times x squared would be x to the fourth. 2 times 1 is 2. 2x squared times 3x, 2 times 3 is going to be positive 6. 6x cubed, yep. And lastly, 2x squared times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And we still have our x squared. Almost. Questions on this so far? Then the next thing we're going to do is subtract. 2x to the fourth minus 2x to the fourth. Cancel out. 2 minus 2 is 0. 3x cubed minus 6x cubed. 3 minus 6 is negative 3x cubed. 0x squared minus 4x squared. 0 minus 4. Negative 4x squared. Now we need to bring the 5x down. Questions on this so far? Well, now we're just going to repeat the process. So we're going to take the first term, 3x squared, negative 3x cubed, and divide it by x squared, the term out front. Now, we will still have the negative 3, because it's just negative 3 over 1, it's just negative 3. X squared, when we divide x squared by our x cubed over x squared would just be x, because 3 over 2, 3 minus 2 is going to be 1. Because when we divide like bases, x cubed over x squared, we subtract the exponents. 3 minus 2 is 1. So our next term is going to be negative 3x. And again, we're going to multiply through our x squared plus 3x plus 2 by negative 3x. Negative 3x times x squared, well, we'll still have the negative 3. X times x squared is x cubed, which is just what we want because we want it to match up to that first term. Now, negative 3x times 3x. Well, negative 3 times positive 3 is 9, and x times x is x squared. And lastly, negative 3x times 2. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. And we still have our x. And then we're going to subtract again. The first one we're subtracting is the negative 3x cubed minus negative 3x cubed. Negative 3 minus negative 3. Negative negative makes a positive, so negative 3 plus 3 is indeed 0. Our next one that we have is negative 4x squared minus negative 9x squared. Negative 4 minus negative 9. Plus, yes, positive 5x squared. Because our negative 9 is going to be the same as plus 9, so negative 4 plus 9 is positive 5. So it's going to give us positive 5x squared. 5x minus negative 6x. Well, our negative again will make a plus. 5x plus 6x is plus 11x. And lastly, we bring down the minus 1, our last term. For so far? X squared minus 3x? Yes, 2x squared, 3x. Yeah. We need one more. Yeah, so we need to figure out what the last one is. And what's in front now is what? 5x squared. And our first term outside is still just x squared, yes? Mm-hmm. Line? Yes. Yep. So 5x squared divided by 5, or x squared is positive 5. So we're going to put plus 5. If it's positive, we put plus. Negative, we just put that negative, that minus. Yes. And it's also telling us the last thing we need to multiply through is 5. Yes? We're going to have to multiply 5 by x squared plus 3x plus 2, yes? 5 times x squared is 5x squared. 5 times 3x is plus 15x. And 5 times 2 is plus 10. And then we will subtract, yes? 5x squared minus 5x squared. 5 minus 5, 0. 11x minus 15x. 11 minus 15. Negative 4x. And negative 1 minus 10. Negative 11. Mm-hmm. Do I have another term to bring down? No. And another thing we can say is we know we're done when the degree of what we have left over is less than the degree of what we're dividing it by. Because what we're dividing it by is a quadratic. It's a degree 2, yes? What we have left here is a degree 1, because x is the first, so we are done. We can't simplify this further.
So what we do is that we put negative 4x minus 11 divided by x squared.
Over x squared plus 3x plus 2. Because when we add the remainder back on, the non-zero remainder, we put whatever we have left over, over what we've been dividing this by, the whole thing. So x squared plus 3x plus 2. A lot of times if we do have a remainder, like for this one here, we'll have an x term, we'll have a constant term. There's nothing saying that I divide it by a quadratic and my remainder is just negative 11 or just 4x. We can have that. Or in the better case, the remainder is 0. Then we don't have to put it because it divided evenly. Yes. Questions on this here? Individually, the steps are nice. Yes. Each step is nice. It is just that there is a lot of them. So we'll need a few because what goes inside our first term is what? 4x to the 4th, yes? So the next term I would need is an x to the almost 3rd. Yep, cubed. And since I don't have a cubed term, we'll have to fill it in as 0x cubed. And that's fine. And then our next term would be x squared, yes? We don't have an x squared term, that's fine. So we can just add it in as 0x squared. Now we do have an x term, plus 5x minus 4. And outside we'll have what's it's being divided by, which is x squared minus 3x minus 2. Now to find out what we're going to be needing to multiply the first part of our answer, we're going to take the biggest term inside, which is 4x to the 4th, and divide it by our biggest term outside, which is x squared. Now most all the ones we're going to do in here and we're going to work with, what we're dividing it by, that biggest term is just going to be a variable to a power x squared x. This still works if it was 2x squared. Some of those will end up giving us fractional answers, and that's fine, but we're mainly going to look at these nicer ones. Now 4x to the 4th divided by x squared, well, we'll still have the 4. X to the 4th divided by x squared, x squared. So the first part of our answer is 4x squared. Now we'll need to multiply our x squared minus 3x minus 2 by 4x squared to see what we needed to subtract from our polynomial inside to get to our next step. Now 4x squared times x squared is going to be 4x to the 4th. 4x squared times negative 3x, 4 times negative 3, negative 12x cubed. And 4x squared times negative 2, negative 8x squared, yes. 4x to the 4th minus 12x cubed minus 8x squared. Four x to the 4th minus 4x to the 4th, 0. 0x cubed minus negative 12x cubed. Well, our negative and negative would make a plus. 0 plus 12 is going to be 12x cubed. 0x squared minus negative 8x squared plus 8x squared. And since we're finished subtracting, we bring down the 5x, and we do this again. So we're going to divide 12x cubed by x squared, which would give us 12x. And since it's positive, above our line, we're going to add plus 12x. Since it's positive, we'll say plus. And then we're going to do this again. We're going to take 12x and multiply it by our x squared minus 3x minus 2. Scroll down. 12x times x is going to be 12x cubed, because that's what we want. We want that first terms to match up. Then we'll do 12x times negative 3x. Negative 36x squared, yes. And lastly, 12x times negative 2 is negative 24x. Bless you. And then again, we're going to need to subtract. And just like the last few, there's a good chance this is going to have a remainder. 12x cubed minus 12x cubed, 0. 8 minus negative 36. Positive. Giving us 44x squared. And again, 8 minus negative 36. We can't plug the variables in, but I can plug the coefficients into the calculator. And then lastly, 5x minus negative 24x, 5 minus negative 24. Negative and negative makes positive, so we have plus 29x. And lastly, we bring down the 4, the negative 4. So I have 44x squared divided by x squared, which is almost just 44. Because x squared divided by x squared, anything divided by itself is 1, so we're just left with the 44. That also means that we're going to have to multiply 44 with our x squared minus 3x minus 2. Now our first multiplication is kind of nice. 44 times x squared as well. 44x squared. Now 44 times negative 3x, 44 times negative 3, 132x, yes. And lastly, 44 times negative 2 is negative 88. And as we can tell already, this is not going to give us 0. 44x squared minus 44x squared, that is 0. 29x minus negative 132x, well, the negative and negative would make a plus. So we have 29x plus 132x, 161x. Negative 4 minus negative 88, negative negative makes a plus, giving us positive 84 as our remainder. 161x plus 84. And since we do have a remainder, we do have to add that back onto our answer, telling us that we have 4x squared plus 12x plus 44 plus 161x plus 84 over x squared minus 3x minus 2. Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? Get something a little different?
Do you know like when you're done with the equation is when you have x squared and then x to the upper?
Well, that and we'll know we're done when we don't have any more here. The degree of what we have down here that we're getting to is less than the degree of what we're dividing by. Or better yet, the number of terms that I have here is more than the number of terms I have here. Since I have 3 of what I'm dividing by and only have 2 left, it's not going to reduce further. There's nothing more we can do. Does that make sense? Any questions on what we've done? Yep. We'll do 2 more because I think we've gotten the hang of this, yes? Yes. X to the 4th plus 2x squared minus x plus 5. So if we set this up, we'll have our x to the 4th term. Let's see here. This one missing? Yep. You're good. So we have our x to the 4th term. We don't have our x cubed term. So we'll have to add in 0x cubed. We have our positive 2x squared, negative x plus 5. Outside we have x squared minus x plus 1. And once we get it set up, we're going to start off with our leading term inside dividing by the leading term outside. So x squared, x to the 4th over x squared, which would give us x squared, because x to the 4th divided by x squared, when we divide like bases, we subtract the exponents. So 4 minus 2 gives us 2. And just like before, we're going to have to multiply through. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times negative x would be negative x to the 3rd. And x squared times 1 is plus 1x squared. So we're going to put our x to the 4th minus x cubed plus x squared underneath their like terms. And then we're going to subtract. X to the 4th minus x to the 4th will be 0. Our 0x cubed minus negative x cubed, our negative and negative would make a positive. So we have 0x cubed plus x cubed, telling us that we have 1x cubed. Two x squared minus x squared, 2 minus 1. There's 1x squared or just x squared. And since we're finished doing our subtraction, we'll bring the next term down. We'll bring that negative x down. And we'll repeat this process again. And x cubed divided by x squared would indeed be positive x. So we have plus x. Telling us that the next term we have to multiply our x squared minus x plus 1 by is going to be just x. And x times x squared is going to be x cubed, x to the 3rd. X times negative x is going to be negative x squared. And x times positive 1 is going to be plus x. So we'll put our x cubed minus x squared plus x under our x cubed plus x squared minus x. And then we're going to subtract. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. X squared minus negative x squared? Because our negative and negative make a plus, telling us we have x squared plus x squared, giving us 2x squared. Negative x minus x is going to be negative 2x. And then lastly, we need to bring down the plus 5. All right, so close. I went on and wrote the answer, not because our last step in finding what goes above the line is going to be 2x squared divided by x squared, telling us that it is 2. So we're going to do 2 times our x squared minus x plus 1. 2 times x squared is going to be 2x squared. 2 times negative x is going to be negative 2x, and 2 times 1 is and that should have been plus 2 on top. And then we will subtract. 2x squared minus 2x squared. 2 minus 2 is 0. Negative 2x minus negative 2x. Well, the negative and negative make a plus. So that's also 0. Yes? And lastly, 5 minus 2 is 3. So if that last term had been a 2 instead of a 5, it would actually divide it evenly. And we wouldn't have had a remainder. But here it's x squared plus x plus 2, plus 3 over x squared minus x plus 1. Questions over long division? We feel good with long division. All right. We feel good with that? 6 problems? If it does divide evenly, we don't have to put the remainder. What we're doing tomorrow, synthetic division. Most, not all, most like synthetic division better than long division. Somewhat.